They could make a few changes if you ask me, Ampy declared. Have a woman come in just once or twice a week, and you would see a huge difference. For one thing, those windows could use some curtains, Some pictures on the walls would not hurt either. Well, some of the fellows have pictures Gomer offered, but they keep them on the insides of their lockers. Ampy paused, leaning on her mop, a knowing look passing over her face. Those are not the kind of pictures I meant. I had better get back to my windows. She marched over to the far end of the barracks, abandoning the mop for a rag, and a bottle of blue liquid Gomer had left on the sill. For a few minutes, there was only the sound of rhythmic scrubbing and the slosh of water. Then, Ampy stopped and inspected the glass. She clicked her tongue in disapproval. Gomer, I do not like to criticize, but you are not getting these windows as clean as you should. What in the world are you using here? Well, just the regular window cleaner that the military gives us, Gomer replied, leaning on his mop. Well, what you really need is vinegar, Ampy stated with absolute authority. Vinegar? With a little warm water, she confirmed. That is what I always use at home. You would not happen to have any lying around, would you? No, ma'am, Gomer said, but I suppose I could get some over at the mess hall. Well, why do you not go and do that? Gomer, if you're going to do a job, you might just as well do it right. Gomer looked nervously toward the door. Well, really, Ampy, I do not think. Go get it, Gomer, she urged gently but firmly. You will see. It will make all the difference in the world on this glass. Yes, ma'am, Gomer conceded. He set his mop against his bunk and hurried out the door, leaving Ampy humming a quiet tune as she wiped down the window sills. Not 2 minutes after Gomer had disappeared down the street, the heavy wooden door of the barracks swung open again. In strode Sergeant Carter. He was a man made of muscle, grit, and volume, his uniform pressed to a razor-sharp edge, his boots gleaming fiercely. He took immense pride in his platoon, and he ran his barracks with an iron fist. Sergeant Carter hummed a little tune to himself, looking forward to a quiet Sunday afternoon inspection. He took 3 steps into the room, and suddenly his boot lost traction. He flailed his arms wildly, his legs shooting out from under him as he skidded across the freshly mopped, soapy floor, barely catching his balance before crashing to the ground. Whoa! Careful! You will track up my clean floor, a feminine voice scolded. Sergeant Carter froze. He slowly turned his head, his eyes bulging in utter disbelief. Standing by the windows was a woman, an older woman, a civilian woman, wearing a United States Marine Corps jacket and a utility cap. He blinked hard, convinced the California heat had finally melted his brain. Huh? Who are you, madam? Ampy turned around, rag in hand, and offered a pleasant smile. Well, I am Mrs. Taylor, but everybody calls me Aunt B. Who are you? Carter felt the blood rushing to his face. The veins in his neck began to throb. Well, I am Sergeant Carter. Would you answer me one question, please? What are you doing here? Ampy looked at him as if he were completely blind. Well, I am mopping the floor and cleaning the windows. You can see that. I do not mean that. Carter barked, his voice rising in volume. I do not mean, what are you doing here with a rag? I mean, what are you doing here in these military barracks? Oh, I am visiting, she said sweetly. Visiting? With a mop? Well, I did not intend to mop, Ampy explained calmly, walking toward him. I am just helping out my friend, Private First Class Gomer-Pyle. Carter's eyes widened further, if that were even possible. Do you know him? Oh, yes, Ampy smiled. So you're a friend of Pyle, huh? The name tasted like ash in the sergeant's mouth. Whenever something impossible and maddening occurred on this base, that name was always attached to it. Yes, a very dear friend, Ampy said warmly. Then she looked down at his feet. Oh, but see, look at what you have done. You should have wiped your feet before you came inside. Look at the marks you have left all over the wet floor. You know, I would love to only have to do this job once. Carter's mouth opened and closed silently for a moment. He was on the verge of a spectacular explosion. "Madam, Mrs. Taylor, Mrs. Taylor." "What is it?" she asked, mildly annoyed by his loud tone. "Look, I do not want to seem rude or anything, but you will really have to leave this building immediately." Ampy gasped, clutching a rag. Leave all this heavy work for Gomer to do by himself? I should say not. "Look, I am sorry," Carter said through gritted teeth, struggling to maintain a shred of professional composure. "But according to military regulations." Just then, the door swung open, and Gomer trotted in, holding a large glass bottle. "Aunt B, I got the vinegar." Gomer stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes darted from the fuming sergeant to the jacket wearing Aunt B. "Oh, hey, Sergeant Carter," Gomer said, offering a weak, trembling smile. "Oh, there you are, Pyle," Carter said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly soft, dangerous hiss. "Now, that is a fantastic way to come into a room." "Yeah," Gomer swallowed hard. "Well, I see you were just talking to this lady here, Sergeant." The civilian lady. Carter enunciated each syllable as if chewing on glass. "That you brought into the barracks." "Well, then you have officially met Aunt B." Gomer tried to sound upbeat, though his knees were shaking. "That is real good, because I have written a lot about you in my letters back home to Mayberry." "Pyle!" Carter roared, the sound echoing off the metal lockers. Aunt B blinked, entirely unbothered by the volume. "Oh, so this is your Sergeant Carter. I did not realize that. You know, Gomer, I pictured him being a little taller." "He is not tall, Aunt B," Gomer whispered frantically, "but he is solid. He is solid as a rock." Sergeant Carter took a deep breath, trying to corral his spiraling sanity. He turned back to Aunt B, forcing a tight, agonizing smile. "Madam, Mrs. Taylor, I am afraid Private Pyle here did not explain the rules of a military base to you. Civilians are absolutely not allowed in the barracks under any circumstances. So, I will have to ask you to leave. Now." "But I came all this way to visit with Gomer," she protested, her lower lip trembling slightly at his harshness. "Well, I am terribly sorry about that," Carter said, not sounding sorry in the least. "But regulations are regulations. You can wait for him in the recreation room, if you like. Although," he cast a murderous glare at Gomer, "it might be kind of a very long wait. But there is so much left to do here," Amby argued, gesturing around the room. "I have barely started on the floor and the windows." "Well, there is nothing we can do about that," Carter snapped, his patience entirely evaporated. "The recreation room is down at the end of the street. You walk out the door and turn left." Ampy looked at Gomer, who nodded sadly. "Oh, I see. Oh, and one more thing, madam," Carter added, pointing a stiff finger at her. "You will have to leave the Marine jacket and the cap here. It is against federal law for a civilian to impersonate military personnel." Oh, yes, of course," Ampy said, suddenly flustered. Gomer hurried over. "I will help you take them off, Aunt B." He gently helped her out of the oversized jacket and took the cap from her head, returning them to his locker. "Well, Gomer," Ampy said, smoothing down her floral dress. "Thank you. I will go wait for you in the recreation room. I hope it will not be too long." "I will do my very best to hurry, Aunt B," Gomer promised softly. Ampy turned to leave, but could not resist one last glance at the floor. "Oh, dear, look what you are doing to the floor with those boots. Look, over there is the clean part." Carter closed his eyes, praying for strength. "Goodbye, Mrs. Taylor." The heavy door clicked shut behind her. The silence in the barracks was profound, heavy, and terrifying. Gomer stood perfectly still, clutching the bottle of vinegar to his chest like a shield. Sergeant Carter slowly turned to face him. The vein in his forehead was practically vibrating. When he spoke, it started as a low rumble and escalated into a deafening roar. "Pyle, you lame brain, you knucklehead, do you have any idea, any realization at all, of how many military regulations you have broken in the last 20 minutes? Gomer stood at attention, his eyes wide with fear. No, Sergeant. Well, let me count them off to you. Carter bellowed, marching right up to Gomer until they were nose to nose. 1. Having a civilian inside the barracks. 2. Having a female civilian inside the barracks. 3. Letting a civilian wear an official United States Marine uniform. Carter paced frantically in front of the bunks, throwing his hands in the air. You have been in the Marines for 3 years. Pyle, 3 years. When are you going to learn? When are you ever going to learn? What does it take to get through that thick, impenetrable skull of yours? Unbeknownst to Sergeant Carter, the barracks door had quietly cracked open. Ampy had realized she forgot her handbag. She stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with horror as she watched this red-faced man scream at her sweet, gentle Gomer. What? Carter. The afternoon sun cast a warm, golden glow over the sprawling grounds of Camp Henderson, a bustling military base dedicated to the rigorous training of the United States Marine Corps. Inside the recreation room, the atmosphere was a lively mix of clattering billiard balls, the rhythmic shuffling of playing cards, and the low, constant hum of young men enjoying a rare moment of leisure. Private First Class Gomer-Pyle sat quietly in a corner, diligently polishing his boots until they shone like black mirrors. His peaceful concentration was broken when a fellow Marine leaned over his shoulder. The Marine told Gomer that he had a visitor waiting for him.